Giulia is an Italian linguist. She specializes in food and beverage, of course, as well as travel and tourism. Her main language pairs are English and French into Italian, but she also translates from Spanish and Arabic. She works as a translator, subtitler, and Italian teacher. Originally from Palermo, Sicily, Giulia is currently based in Ferrara in the region of Emilia-Romagna. I have to say is that as someone who's traveled around most of Italy over the years, two of my absolute favorite regions for food are Sicily and, of course, Emilia-Romagna is very famous for its food as well. So I'm particularly excited to introduce Giulia's talk on translating for the food industry. Giulia, it's great to have you with us, and we will pass over the controls to you now.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Sohila, and thank you to all the team in CIOL for organizing this and for having me today. Just give me a couple of seconds to make sure that my screen is properly shared. If you could just please give me a heads up, it would be lovely. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So let's begin. Yes, as Dom was saying, we will be talking about translation for the food and beverages industry, and in particular, we'll focus on the importance of culture as an element related to food and beverage, and how, as linguists, we can convey all the meanings related to culture. So today we'll be discussing actually translation for the food and beverage. We'll start with a very short introduction. Then we'll have a look at how we can specialize in this specific domain, and then we'll dive into the biggest part actually of our presentation, which is the relationship between food and culture, explained in my view in 6 points. So let's begin. Before continuing, let me just add a few words about me, even if Dom did it lovely. Yes, I specialize in food and beverage and also in travel and tourism. And I'd like to pause a minute discussing this relationship between these two industries, because they are quite related to one another. If you think about translating, for instance, a blog post about visiting a specific country or a specific city, you will probably have to translate about where to go or what to do in that specific place. But you will absolutely have to translate also about food and beverage typical of that place. So food and beverage and travel and tourism are often intertwined. Now, yes, Dom was saying that actually Sicily and Emilia-Romagna are two of the regions in Italy where food is really of the essence. And this is probably one of the reasons why I decided to specialize in this industry. I come from Palermo, and this is a picture of cannoli. I don't know if you've ever tried them, but I highly recommend them. I recommend you to do it. And then when I moved to Emilia-Romagna, well, this is the cradle of pasta making. So yeah, I could not but choose this specialism. But now enough about me, and I'd like to know a bit about you, just to have the general idea. And I'll ask for Sohila's and Dom's help here. You see a poll shared on your screen. So if you could please share a bit about you, just tell us if you're a linguist specialized in food and beverages or not.
There we go. So the poll should be up for all our attendees. Are you a linguist specialized in food and beverage? Please choose yes or no. And we'll keep that open for a little bit longer. The votes are coming in. We'll keep it open just for another 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, we can close the poll. So
I'm very curious.
So we have those specialized already in food and beverage are 14%, and 86% are not specialized in food and beverage.
Okay, that's great. I hope that.
Just to add, somebody else has said, can you add the option no, but I would like to be a linguist specialized in food and beverage. And
I actually thought about doing that. Actually, yeah, that's true. Well, I hope that actually in this presentation you'll be able to, for those of you who are willing and hope to specialize in this industry, I hope that you learn something useful. For those who are not interested, maybe you'll find some passion today. And for those who already are, I hope that you'll still be able to learn something today. So thank you for answering. And moving on, how can you actually specialize in the food and beverage industry? Well, as you can imagine, there's no one answer, and this can apply to every specialism. It's a journey that everybody makes. Everyone has a different background, and so there's no really one answer, not a secret recipe, if you will. But these were my personal ingredients, and I hope that maybe you can draw from some of them. Well, first of all, curiosity and continuous research is something that we absolutely have to take into consideration. And this is because you will really never reach the goal of knowing it all. So you really have to be curious and to read, watch videos, documentaries, whatever suits you, it works best for you. And as I am personally concerned, I approached this industry starting through wines. So I read lots of books, and then I decided that things could get a little bit more serious. So I took the WSET course, the level 1 in wines. And if you're interested in this particular word, in this particular aspect of the industry, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust is probably the most renowned education provider worldwide. So have a look online. They have plenty of locations. You can also take the courses and the tests online. So have a look if you're interested in this. This is very interesting. Then once I took my WSET level 1, of course, I didn't stop there, and I continued taking courses about food and beverage translation, but also about food and beverage writing. And this is because this is for two reasons mainly. The first one is that besides from translation, I also am specializing in offering copywriting services. But even if you're not interested in this and you're mostly interested in translation, refining your writing skills can also help you hone your translation skills. So think about that too. And the last element, I think this is the most fun part, go to wine tastings, food tastings. And this is very important because it gives a more practical, it makes things a little bit more practical, and it helps you understand what you're talking about. And this leads me to the following slide. What does translation for food and beverages taste like? The very first aspect, aromas, flavors, colors, these are all things that you have to understand. And if you do it firsthand, I think that it really helps. But of course, apart from that, you really have to study and understand the terminology. So things can get a bit technical as well when you're translating, sorry, for this industry. Then, what other types of texts are you expected to translate for this sector? Well, restaurant menus, recipes, and then things can get a little bit more technical, for example, with product text sheets, but also a little bit more creative and also probably lead to transcreation with ad campaigns, slogans, payoffs, marketing copy. So this is really an industry where there are lots of different types of content, both technical and creative. Now, moving on to the biggest part of our presentation, the relationship between food and culture. This is very important because as linguists, we don't just translate words, but also cultures in some way. So it's very important to be able to convey those meanings, those references that might not always be explicit. I'd like to start with a quote by philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach. Man is what he eats. Feuerbach meant lots of things with this quote, but in our particular case, we can take this quote as reference, thinking about the meaning that food, the role that food plays in our lives. It's not just about nutritional elements that we ingest to keep going, to be alive, but it really has a lot about to do about who we are and the culture we come from, but also the values we believe in. think about people who may choose to follow a vegan diet because of health reasons or environment reasons, or because of ethics. So yeah, it's really very important that as linguists we keep this in mind. Now let's see what these 6 points are. So the first one is society, through topics such as love and family, and we'll see a couple of practical examples in a minute. Then cultural habits, and once again, I chose two particular real-life examples that I hope you like. We'll then dive into the different cuisines that exist all over the world and how we can respect them and convey these different cuisines. We'll then discuss language, and in particular the food-related idioms that exist in every language. In some languages more than in others. Then we'll move on to religion, which is a big part of many cultures around the world. And we'll end with names and stories, and you'll see what I mean by that at the end. Now, let's begin with society. Oftentimes, food brands take advantage, if you will, of the current topics that exist in a specific country to somehow market their brand and their products. And let's see a real life example. This is an ad by Garofalo, which is a famous Italian pasta making brand. And I don't know if some of you maybe know Italian, but this is a very good example of, first of all, hyperlocalization, because the biggest copy, the biggest part of the copy is actually not written in Italian, but in Neapolitan, which is the language or dialect, if you will, spoken in Naples. Then you also have an Italian translation on the bottom, which roughly translates into, we don't care about with whom you make it, pasta, as long as you make it al dente, so firm. Now, even if you don't really get the reference, the image also helps us a bit, and different pasta shapes represent different kinds of families, so homosexual, heterosexual, and any kind of possible existing family. So Garofalo here is implicitly referring to something that a person from Barilla had previously said about not really wanting to represent homosexual families in their ads. If you're curious to know the whole story, I'm sure you can find it online. So Garofalo kind of took advantage, leveraged this opportunity and said, we're not like that, okay? We don't really care how your family looks. We're fine with that as long as you taste good, make good pasta. All right, so this is a good example of how food brands can leverage situations in the real world to stand out from competitors as well. Now, I'll ask Dom's and Sohila's help once again for a very short video. It's an ad, once again, from a supermarket in Italy. Let's just watch it and then we'll discuss it in particular. So, yeah, I don't know if, okay, great, thank you.
If we could just load up the video now. We can't see the video. Here we go.
Nasce la pasta tra i grani pregiati italiani, fior e cocco, su una grande storia d'amore, per la pasta e il sugo, per questo è più buona dentro. La cap sei tu.
Okay.
I hope you managed to see it. I didn't.
Yes, we got there. Yes.
Okay, that's great. It's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, it was very short, but it's another. I don't know if you. Oh, sorry. Here I am. I'm back. It was a very short video, but I think it was a good example of how actually food brands, supermarkets as well in this case, can leverage people's feelings to market their services, because food really actually has a very important connection with love, with family, with all those important aspects in our life. So it's very important as linguists that we try and convey those meanings when we translate as well. Now, moving on to the second element of 6 points, cultural habits. I chose two very specific examples here coming from two different countries, two different cultures. The first one starts with a question: is cheese a dessert? Why am I asking you this? Because in France and in slowly also in other countries and high-level restaurants, cheese is usually served right before dessert or as an alternative to dessert. So this is something that's quite common in France, but might not be in other countries. So if we're translating a text, let's say a restaurant menu that offer like a cheese plate in that specific position, how should we deal with that? Well, I think in this case, it all has to do with functionality. So if we are translating the set restaurant menu, the order of the dishes doesn't really change from one language to the other. So it doesn't matter if we are translating the menu, sorry, in Italian or in French or in Spanish, because the chef will serve that specific dish in that specific order. So in that case, I don't think it's important that we change it, or otherwise it's better not to change the order. Whereas if we're translating literature pieces such as novels, for instance, in that case we can consider adapting that specific dish or that specific food, but it all depends on the approach that we choose to adopt. So whether it is centripetal or centrifugal, and it means in the two cases, if we prefer to make the reader understand that they're reading a translation, and this doesn't mean that the translation is poor, but rather that we really want to focus on the source culture elements. Or if we choose to make the readers feel more at ease, more in their comfort zone, and in that case, we can maybe decide to change the name of the dish or the name of that specific food. It all depends on the specific approach that we adopt. The second example I'd like to mention comes from the Spanish speaking world, and it's the word sobremesa. Sobremesa literally means on the table, over the table, top of the table, but it actually refers to a habit, the habit of staying just sat at the table after dinner, after lunch, and enjoying quality time with family, friends, and loved ones. This is a habit that might not just be limited to the Spanish-speaking world, but the term itself is in Spanish, and I personally didn't find any equivalents, at least in the languages that I know, and I think it might be tricky to find it in other languages as well. So once again, I'd like to ask you in the poll that's coming, how would you convey the meaning of sobremesa in your own language? And you have different options you can choose from.
Okay, so yes, we have the poll up here. How would you convey the meaning of sobremesa in your own language? You can see the options there. Leave it in Spanish, add an explanation, reformulate. Depends on the context.
Let's see what you...
word sobremesa is as well. So we'll leave this open for a little bit longer because the votes are coming in. Sure. And we'll hold it open for another just 2 seconds. 1,
Thank you, Dom.
2. Okay. So the results, I'd leave it in Spanish, 4%. I'd leave it in Spanish and add an explanation in brackets, 30%. I'd reformulate. It depends on the context, sorry, I'd reformulate as 10%. It depends on the context is 56%.
Thank you, Dom. I can see it, but it's very, very tiny. Thank you. Yeah, so I think it depends on the context was the biggest answer, the biggest choice. So yeah, I personally agree with that, and this is an answer that we typically give as linguists. It all depends on the context, and it's true. And this is because think about where we find that word. If it's a general text, maybe it's just written there because it was a Spanish-speaking person who wrote the text. In that case, it's probably not very important to leave it there, leave the word as it is, but we can maybe adapt it or reformulate as long as the concept is kept. But on the other hand, if we're translating a travel book, talking about Spain or any other Spanish-speaking country, and we have the word sobremesa, in that case, it's probably referring to that specific habit. It's describing something that is cultural related. So in that case, I think it's very important that we keep the source word and we add or translate, if it's already there, an explanation. Now, different cuisines all over the world at the level of countries or regions, or even from one city to the other, there are different cuisines that really represent the people that live in a specific place. And for the last time, I'd like to ask you if you know what are pelmeni. Don't worry, it's not probably a very common thing to know, but let's see.
Okay, what are pelmeni? Are pelmeni a Polish dessert made of chocolate and apples, a Russian type of coffee made with cream, a Central and Eastern European type of stuffed pasta? Again, we'll hold this open for a little bit longer as the votes come in. I would say another 3 seconds from now. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we have a Polish dessert made of chocolate and apples, 6%, Russian type of coffee made with cream, 4%, and 90% saying a Central and Eastern European type of stuffed pasta.
90% is right. Very good. You passed your test. Well, yeah, exactly. This is what pelmeni are. I actually discovered it not long ago firsthand. But yeah, so lots of people knew, but probably, and as we could see, not all of you. And why is this important? Because there are so many dishes and recipes and food out there that it's impossible to know it all. So what do we do if we encounter a word like pelmeni? And we have to translate it. Should we keep it? Should we translate it? Should we reformulate somehow? Once again, it depends. If we're translating a general text, maybe it's not that important to keep the word pelmeni. Maybe we can adapt it. Maybe we can use a more general word. We could say something like dumplings. It's not really dumplings, but you know what I mean. Something that maybe more people can understand. But again, if we're translating a travel book, it's very important that we specify that source word, because we are talking about that specific dish. So it's typical of a specific country, and we should keep it and explain what we're talking about. And once again, in literature, it all depends on the approach that we choose to adopt. So as you can see, there are so many different approaches and choices that we can make, and they all depend on the context. Now, moving on to our fourth element, which is language, and in the specific food-related idioms. I chose here 3 idioms that are more or less the same in 3 different languages: Italian, English, and French. In Italian, we say la ciliegina sulla torta, which is the same thing as saying in English cherry on top, and slightly different, but with the same meaning, the icing on the cake. And also in French, we have la cerise sur le gâteau, and they all mean to add the final touches to something in order to make it perfect. Why am I discussing these examples? Because when we are translating or writing or transcreating, when we are working with especially marketing text, marketing copy, we should, or better, we should consider using a specific semantic field. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the very first slides of this presentation, I used food and beverage related words and expressions. I said something like my ingredients to specialize, what does food and beverage taste like? Maybe you haven't noticed, but even if you haven't, this helps the people who write or translate to make the reader feel closer to the topic they're reading, and it helps creating a specific atmosphere, if you will. So when we're translating or transcreating, it's very important that we stick to that specific semantic field. And food idioms help us do that as well. But what if there is no equivalence, such as in this case? What if the language I'm translating into doesn't have an equivalent to all these idioms? Well, in that case, we can try and find and reformulate, maybe, using different words, but something that recalls somehow food and beverage. I think about the adjective mouth-watering, which can actually be applied to lots of different words and help us give that idea of food and beverage industry. Now, religion. This is a very sensitive topic, and it's something that it's a big part, plays a big role in many cultures all over the world. And as you know, in probably every religion, there are some things that people shouldn't eat or drink. I think about pork meat, beef meat, alcohol. So how do we deal with that? Well, you might probably ask, well, we're translating, so we don't really choose what is written in the text. We just translate that. And what if we find something that might be offensive for the target culture? Well, and to that I respond that we don't just translate words, but we translate culture somehow. And as language experts, I think we should advise our clients on sensitive aspects such as these. So it doesn't just concern words, but also images. For instance, some images might be offensive for some specific target culture, target audiences. So I think it's very important, and I think this also helps us stand out from other linguists. Maybe if we create that relationship with our clients, becoming references for them, becoming experts for everything that concerns language, but culture as well. And as for the last aspect of our presentation, names and stories. What do I mean by that? I'll explain it to you with an example. Once again, I chose English, Spanish, and French just because I hope that it might help everybody to get those references. So this is the picture represents sponge cake, which more or less with slightly differences is the equivalent in Italian to pan di Spagna and in French to genoise. Now, the English word is quite general, but the Italian and the French words actually refer to nationalities or to cities, but they are not the same. So what has happened here throughout history? Well, the story is actually the same. Very briefly, the pastry chef who invented pan di Spagna came from Genoa in Italy, and we already have explained the word genoise, but legends says that he invented pan di Spagna while on a diplomatic visit in, guess where, Spain, in Madrid. So that's where the Italian word comes from. Why is this important as linguists? I think it is important for two main reasons. The first one is that as culture experts and language experts, it's important for us to know as many things as we can. And if we specialize in the food and beverage industry, knowing these relationships and this history somehow, this story, help us really get a sense of what culture means for specific countries. And then it's also important from a linguistic point of view, because sometimes things can have very different names but actually refer to the same thing, or on the contrary, can have a very similar name but actually refer to completely different things. So it's very, very important that we do our research and that we make sure that what we're translating is the right thing. Yeah, that's exactly what I've just said. Now, I think that we've actually reached the end of our presentation. I'm leaving you here a couple of contacts. If you'd like to get in touch, I'd be very happy to. You can also scan the QR code to get to my link tree. But I think we still have some time. So if you already have any questions, comments, or anything, I'll be very happy to listen to them and answer them if I can. And thank you very much for having me and for listening.
Thank you very much, Giulia. That was absolutely fascinating. And yes, the questions have been coming in. So let's get straight into them. I just wanted to say, actually, first of all, the sobremesa has caused some debate in the chat with Portuguese people, speakers saying it actually means dessert, but that's of course dessert in Portuguese, but sobremesa has a different meaning. I also actually put sobremesa in Google Translate while we're here, and its Spanish translation was desktop, which of course would be highly inappropriate, and it's showing lots of pictures of people on laptops on a computer for that translation. So very, very interesting there. So I'll take some questions. We've got some questions around food and beverage writing courses. So a few questions here, whether you have specific recommendations on food and writing courses, can they be taken online, in person, and again, any kind of recommendations on those?
Yeah, I thought about adding specific examples, but actually all the courses I took were in Italian, because of course my target language is Italian, so that's the language I work with. But I can tell you what my experience was, and I'm sure that will be some equivalent in all the other countries as well. So for instance, I took a course with a very famous publishing house in Italy, which is called Feltrinelli, if you maybe know it. And so probably other big publishing houses in other countries do the same, because they try and teach also people who are interested and passionate how to write. Then I also took other courses with local language schools, which provided both food and beverage translation courses and also writing courses. And I'm sure in any case, if you type food and beverage translation, or also it's probably sometimes easier to look for how to become a food and beverage critics. That's how you say it, critics. So yes, this is something that I'm also doing. I'm starting in a month. I start a new course on how to actually write reviews for the food and beverage world. So this is something that's very similar to food and beverage writing, and that can also help you. And yeah, have a look around also from the usual course providers, also for the translation world, because sometimes they also offer copywriting courses for specific industries such as this one.
Very good. Okay, next in, so really interesting, thank you. Comment: has Giulia worked with any translation agencies that specialize in the food and beverage industry? And indeed, are there any specific translation agencies that you would highly recommend?
Well, I haven't actually worked with translation agencies that only specialize in the food and beverage industry, but with translation agencies that are in general more marketing, more focused on marketing, and so they actually get more clients from, I mean, this industry. It might be food and beverage, but also others. But if you work with translation agencies which are specialized in marketing and creative content as well, you get higher chances of working on this specific industry. Then I cannot maybe say the names of specific agencies, but yes, it's probably easier to to work on this kind of texts if you work with marketing focused translation agencies.
Okay, got it. That's great. Okay. So then, here's a comment here, according to translation professional ethics guidelines, I guess, translators shouldn't provide cultural bridges, explanations, clarifications. It is the author's or the publisher's role. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. I think it all depends, first of all, on the type of client that you have. I, for instance, work with a direct client, which is a restaurant, and French restaurant. Sometimes I find words that refer to specific food in France and are absolutely normal for French-speaking people, but are not at all for Italian people. So in that case, I take the liberty, if you will, to add something to specify what we're talking about. Then if it's really something that I'm not sure whether it would be, fine to translate or not. Of course, I talk about it with the end client, but it all depends on the client that you have. So if you have a direct client, it's easier to discuss these kind of issues and say, well, look, I think it's better to add an explanation, a very short one. What do you think about that? And in my experience, they usually let you do it if you think that it's the good solution, the best solution. The same with the translation agencies. They know what you're talking about, so it's even easier to have the kind of communication with them. Then again, it depends on the client. So if you talk specifically about publishing houses and literature, as we mentioned earlier, once again, it's very, that's almost a completely different topic, because literature translation is a different world. So that's why I also said it depends on the approach that you together with the publisher and the editor choose to adopt. So if you are willing, if you prefer to make that source culture appear somehow, or if you prefer to make the reader feel more at ease, more in their comfort zone.
Wonderful, thank you for that. Okay, so the next one's more of a comment, but interesting. The British version of Genoa cake, I assume this is probably in response to the Pan di Spagna section, but the British version of Genoa cake has cherries on it. Madeira cake is the plain vanilla sponge. So it's his comments. I was reminded of being in Italy and seeing, going to get an ice cream and seeing one of the options being zuppa inglese, English soup, which doesn't sound especially appetizing, and being there trying to wonder what on earth this ice cream it is. The best we could come up with, it's some sort of version of a trifle in an ice cream, or who knows, but that always used to make us smile. Okay, so the next question, could you briefly talk about how you acquired your first clients?
Sure. In this specific industry, well, my first ones were actually a translation agency. I mainly work with translation agencies in general, okay. And also in the food and beverage industry, I work with lots of translation agencies. As I said, they're not really specialized just in food and beverage, but they're more marketing oriented. So it's easier for them to also get this kind of jobs. And as I said before, I also work with direct clients, such as restaurants, for instance. And I get some of them through LinkedIn, actually. Get out. First thing is get out there. And if you specialize in this industry, communicate it to people. Say it to your other colleagues that you specializing in this, because sometimes it happened to me that maybe I didn't see a post about a job offering, But then a colleague reached out to me and said, hey, look, there's this job offer about, they're looking for a translator specialized in food and beverage, so have a look at it. So yeah, I think that it's very important to be out there and to let people know what you do, and to always have a look at LinkedIn offers, posts in LinkedIn. They can be very helpful in that case, and also reach out to your direct clients. So for instance, restaurants, have a look on the internet, see what could work for you and for your specialism. So I, for instance, reach out to restaurants sometimes, maybe on on the border between France and Italy, in my case, for instance, for my language combinations, my language pairs. So yeah, think about these kind of things and reach out to direct clients as well.
Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, lots of comments coming in to say what a great presentation. Thanks. Sorry if I'm not reading them out, but we do appreciate receiving them. Question here, what made you so interested in food in the first instance?
Well, yeah, my origins were very helpful in that. In Italy, food is really, and wine is really of the essence, if you will. And my passion really started through wines at first, but I'm very passionate about this industry because of the whole topic of this presentation. What I mean by that is that food is really, I think, a means to convey something, what we are as individuals, but also as whole nations. And as linguists, we get a chance to convey that to the rest of the world. And I think that's very, very fascinating, and that makes it very interesting for us in our profession.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're just coming up to break, but maybe we'll take one more question, and apologies to everyone who's putting questions we've not had time to read. But how does your copywriting training that you've had assist you in offering copywriting services? Do you offer copywriting services in addition to translation or at the same time?
I mean, it depends on the client's needs. If they need both services, then it's fine. But they're usually separated. So sometimes you find clients who need translation, so they come from different countries and need their texts translated into Italian. Copywriting services are maybe usually more requested by clients with the same target language as yours. So they might not correspond, the source, the clients who ask for translation and the clients who ask for copywriting. They're usually different types of clients. But I think that in general, if you offer copywriting services, it can help you, first of all, make the clients understand that you really know how to write and therefore how to translate somehow. And it really helps you also hone your skills, because if you are a good writer, you are somehow a better translator, because translators have to write somehow. So I think it's a very good combination, but of course you really have to like it, and otherwise there's no point in doing it.
That's wonderful. Well, grazie mille, Giulia. Thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. Which is always.
Thank you very much. And